Okay. Good morning, everybody. The 29 subscribers, and anybody else who watches this video. Okay. This is the second part of Chapter 1. World War III has begun. And John Hagee's Jerusalem Countdown. A prelude to war. Okay. Consider the parade of nations at war. Terrorism is affecting many nations of our world because of the attacks by Islamic terrorists. There is today a parade of nations who have entered the war with Islam. America is at war with radical Islam. America did not respond to the terrorist attacks in the Carter administration when the radical Islam group led by Ayatollah Khamenei, Ayatollah Khamenei, overran the American embassy in Tehran, capturing 66 U.S. hostages and demanding an apology from America, whom they considered the Great Satan. Mobs burned the American flag and shouted, "Death to America," which was seen on national television in America. By counting the number of days that the hostages had been held in captivity, nightly announcements such as "America held hostage day 89" focused on the prolonged aspect of the situation. The American people began to see President Carter as a weak leader, and the hostage crisis led to his political demise. This hostage crisis caused radical Islamics to see America as weak and powerless to stop their terrorist attacks. History supports this fact. Weakness breeds war. America retreated from Beirut, Lebanon in 1983 when 220 U.S. Marines were killed by the Hezbollah terrorists. The same terrorists who attacked Israel on July 12, 2006, killing 8 Israeli soldiers and kidnapping 2 others, which have yet to be returned. America did nothing. When the terrorists attacked the New York World Trade Center in 1993, during the Clinton administration, America did nothing. When the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania was attacked in 1998, President Clinton fired missiles into an abandoned terrorist camp, killing several sand dunes and terrifying a few camels. This bold and fearless action was taken to get his sexual exploits with Monica Lewinsky off the front pages of America's newspapers. Again, America did nothing. When the USS Cole was attacked by terrorists in 2000, an investigation could not find who was responsible, and America did nothing once again. Then came 9/11. The terrorists, believing America would not retaliate because of past performance, murdered almost 3,000 Americans as the nation watched in stunned disbelief on national television. 2 commercial airliners crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Smoke and flames leaped upward. Shocking scenes of Americans leaping to their death are now etched into the brains of millions of Americans. As brave policemen and New York City firemen dashed into the building to rescue their fellow citizens, the buildings collapsed, sending thick clouds of smoke, dust, and debris 4 blocks in every direction. In a matter of seconds, the dreams and hopes of thousands of families ended in unspeakable horror. It was America's new day of infamy. A third flight, United Airlines Flight 93, was hijacked and crashed in Pennsylvania, where American passengers charged the terrorists barehanded under the mantra, "Let's roll." That plane was destined for the White House. God bless the sacred memory of those brave Americans who gave their lives to protect our president. Our fourth flight, American Airlines Flight 77, was hijacked and crashed into the Pentagon. Within minutes, America's symbols of power and pride were in smoldering ruins. More than 6,000 people were killed in all four crashes. It was the worst attack on American soil since the British burned the White House in 1813. It was an act of war. Ladies and gentlemen of America, we are at war with Islamofascism. Jihad has come to America. We are in a war for our survival. England is at war with radical Islam. On July 7, 2005, in London, England, Islamic terrorists exploded bombs on 3 underground trains and a double-decker bus, killing 52 people and injuring more than 700. Just a few days before the time of this writing, British police arrested 24 Islamic terrorists who planned to blow up 10 passenger planes flying between Britain and America. Those planes were filled with Americans. It was to be a mass murder of monumental proportions. This was clearly an act of war. As more details emerge about this thwarted terror plot in London, the New York Post is reporting that 2 of the suspects in police custody planned to sacrifice their 6-month-old son in the name of jihad. Apparently, Abdullah Ahmed Ali, age 25, and his wife, Kasor, age 23, secretly plotted to use their child's baby's bottle as a liquid bomb to destroy themselves and their child, along with the entire plane. As horrifying as this is, it is not an isolated phenomenon. In fact, British security experts believe this is only the latest example in the disturbing trend that is growing in popularity among the Islamist fascists. A woman using her innocent appearance to dispel suspicions and carry out deadly terrorist attacks. Even worse, in the willingness of many Muslim women to exploit their young children in order to realize their hideous goals. As a security advisor to British government told The Sun, "It may be beyond belief, but we are convinced that there are now women in Britain who are prepared to die with their babies for their twisted cause. They are ruthless, single-minded, and totally committed." France is at war with radical Islam. Last spring, the world watched on international television as Islamic youth set Paris on fire night after night. It became obvious to the world that these Islamic youths did not move to France to become French. They intended to make France submit to the goals of Islam. 10 to 12% of France is Islamic. A personal friend who has just returned to America after living in France for 5 years said that they were awakened one night as Islamic youths marched down the streets in columns chanting, "Death to the Jews." Canada is at war with Islamofascists. Recently, Islamic terrorists were arrested in Canada, with 3 times the explosive used in the terrorist attack on the Alfred E. Murray Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. What was the objective of these Islamic terrorists in Canada? To capture Canada's Prime Minister and cut his head off? This is an act of war. Spain is at war with radical Islam. Bombs exploded on 3 commuter trains in Madrid, Spain on March 11, 2004, killing 201 and injuring 1,400 people. Islamic leaders told Spain to take their troops out of Iraq, and Spain bowed immediately to the demands of radical Islam. Spain is finished as a democracy. Islam has learned that the Spanish government will bow and submit if the terror is sufficient. Russia and China are at war with America and Israel. Russia and China have formed an Axis power with Iran. China has a multi-billion-dollar energy agreement with Iran. Russia has been helping Iran develop its missile systems and nuclear centers for years. Several years ago, former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel sat in my office and told me that the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, has given him pictorial proof that Russian scientists were helping Iran in the development of their missile systems. That pictorial proof was given to American intelligence before they would believe that Russians were in Iran helping in the development of these nuclear centers. Russia and China have done everything within their power to protect Iran from sanctions in the United Nations proceedings. It is very clear that Russia and China have sided with Iran against the United States and Israel. North Korea is at war with America and Israel. The world was made acutely aware of North Korea's agenda to push itself into a more prominent nuclear power in recent news. Despite warnings from the United Nations against it, North Korea proceeded with a test of its nuclear missiles on October 8, 2006. The news agency in South Korea says North Korea's test was aimed at getting the U.S. to the negotiating tables, and that North Korea is willing to give up its nuclear weapons and re-enter international peace talks only once the U.S. takes corresponding measures. Clearly, North Korea has an agenda against America. The country is also on the side of the Islamic fascists desiring to end America and Israel, since it supplies the weapons, technologies for Iran and Syria. And considering the parade of nations at war, throw in the Islamic attacks in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Kuwait, the Philippines, Egypt, Turkey, Bangladesh, and Thailand. When you consider all of the nations that are at war for or against Islamofascism, there is no way to escape the logical conclusion that World War III has begun. Because they hate. In one of the most informative and dramatic interviews in the 28 years of John Hagee Ministries, it was my pleasure to interview Brigitte Gabriel, author of the best-selling book, Because They Hate. I urge every person in America to read her book. Brigitte is a beautiful, intelligent, and articulate Arab Christian and a victim of radical Islam during the Lebanese Civil War. Gabriel's departure from the anti-Israel mindset of her Arab culture followed her 1982 visit to Israel in search of medical assistance for her seriously wounded mother. Faced with the compassion, the respect, and the kindness of Israelis, Gabriel denounced her government's propaganda about the Jews and the people of Israel. Gabriel returned to Israel 2 years later and began her career as a journalist. She quickly rose to the position of news anchor for World News. She married an American war correspondent in Jerusalem and relocated in America, where she became a U.S. citizen. Okay. And I'm gonna stop there. This video, I would say, is long. So, thank you for watching.